Good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Pam should be on here any second now. But do want to say that we are doing a lot with Women of Consciousness at this time. We have our podcast, obviously, that we do. We try to do it every Tuesday if we can. But we also have, if you go to our website, womenofconsciousness.com, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook as well. We will be posting some events that we'll be having in the future, goddess circles being one of them, and then some other stuff that we will be doing in terms of workshops. We're going to be doing a virtual retreat, so we would love to have you join us. That would be really awesome. And hopefully leading up to an in-person retreat for individuals who are wanting to get to know each other in person, but you can also do it virtually. So anybody around the world can join these things. And there will be a charge for the retreat, because we are going to get really deep into some important stuff in consciousness, and the divine feminine, which we're talking about today. Um, so, Pam,
Good morning.
I think you're Oh, there you are. Good.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I surrender to the mysteries of the divine feminine. Now, what does that even mean? That's a big mouthful. And I'm gonna just give an idea of what I mean by it, and then Pam, you can talk about what it means to you. But so surrendering to the mysteries of the divine feminine is really about surrender. It's about allowing ourselves to let things emerge without trying to control or force. And so the sacred masculine would be more driving sort of the direction of where something is going. It's more foundational, it's focused, and it knows where it's going. With the feminine, it's kind of like allowing the mystery to unfold without having any say in the direction. And I wouldn't say that we could fully surrender. So I wouldn't say it's a full surrender, but I would say it is a surrender to. A full surrender would be like, I'm just going to lay on the couch and do nothing at all. And then nothing would happen. But something would happen, but you probably just like decay and then that's it. Eventually you have to eat that, which would be very masculine drive. Like I gotta feed myself, right, to survive. So surrendering to the mystery is not about like letting go of the idea of the sacred masculine and having some sort of maybe a plan or intention. Um, but it's really about allowing things to emerge. Kind of you could for me, I would say this. I would say, okay, I'm gonna do my declarations, and I still use this model because it does work that I learned in training when I was in the Community Leadership Foundation, doing trainings as a life coach and then just being a participant of the trainings. So declarations, right? Really the I am, the essence of who we are, then the intention. And the intention is really the driving force. Like what is it that I'm calling forth? And then we would do it by milestones where we would break it down into these tiny micro milestones or actions to get to that bigger intention, but really using the essence as a driver. So I would say in the feminine, if we're using the feminine or surrendering to the feminine, I would then do my declarations, maybe my intentions, but probably not milestones. I wouldn't really kind of dictate how my day is going to look. Rather, I would allow the day to tell me what it's going to look like and then let things emerge. It's like not an easy process and you have to be patient. And sometimes you're wondering if it's even the right direction. At least I am. I'm like, am I doing this? Maybe I should just get back into my masculine driver energy. But I can say this, if you fully allow yourself to go through the process and surrender to the mystery and allow things to emerge, what emerges is closer to the essence of who you are
Mm.
than what you could have created on your own.
Mhm.
And it's a lot more bountiful, it's a lot more abundant, and it's beautiful, and it plays out so perfectly, but it's very hard for us as individuals to allow ourselves to surrender to the mystery because we want to control everything. We're really secretly all control freaks in my mind. I don't care who you are. Everyone's a control freak.
Right? There's safety
Trying
and
to
control.
That's right. Control our outcomes, control where we work, control what we eat, control how we drive, control everything is just feels overly controlled. And I'm hearing this quite a bit from a lot of women actually that are had a friend on Facebook is like, I'm surrendering to the mystery of the divine feminine. She didn't say it that way, but she's like, I'm surrendering and I'm letting things emerge. And I'm like, oh my God, I think people are catching on to this.
Mhm.
That they're finally just I think we're just especially women, I think we're just done. We're
Yeah.
just, like, over it. I'm over it. I am as a woman. Now, I'm not saying men don't feel like this, but as a woman, I'm over it. Like, just let things emerge as they're gonna emerge. I'm tired of trying to force agendas or, things on people or whatever it is to sway people to support or whatever it is on any subject or topic. It's just like, let things just emerge. I'm tired. I'm tired of being the driver. I'm tired of, I'm just tired. That's how I feel. I feel overly exhausted by it. So, anyway, what do you have to say about the mysteries?
Oh, no, I like that. I liked your point of view. I definitely resonate with that. And I liked how you said it just gets you closer to your own true, authentic essence, that then you embody and kind of radiate from that space. I mean, for me, with the divine feminine and surrendering, it just comes to like the heart space, right? It comes to this core intuition, right? Like creativity lies in the unknown. You can't really force yourself to be creative sometimes. I think that's why we get like writer's block and those kind of things because we're like trying to force this creativity to emerge rather than sitting in stillness and just being and just allowing. And I also feel like from my personal experiences, when you're talking about like control, um, there was a time where the only thing that I felt, I guess, at like a subconscious level, because it came up when I was, doing shadow work and intentionally working with myself, um, about the energy. I think we make those milestones like you're saying, right? Like, okay, maybe tomorrow I'm going to hit this and this project, and like this task needs to be completed. But then you wake up and the energy is not there, right? The drive, the ambition, and now it's just mental, like, oh, I have to do this, I said I was going to do this, but then you like fight with yourself to like force it to happen. um so there was a time when I was waking up and just going into like chores and house cleaning, right? Like, because that was something I could control. And it was something that, like, I didn't have to get swept away into like lots of logic and all of those things. It was just a natural kind of flow state. But I recognized in that how to work with my energy that I was waking up with, right? And so maybe like my mind wanted me to do this, and this for that day, but the energy, the emotion, like that was flowing, in a different direction to get me to put my attention and my conscious awareness in a different area. And so it's even just surrendering to trust, right, that you're going to accomplish all of the chores and all of the things that need to be done that are prior, but knowing like there's other parts of life, there's other lessons, there's other tests that come up, and to pay attention to the energy that we feel from the beginning of the day onward, right? Noticing how that shifts and changes and carries us. I think part of the feminine and her mystery is the heart space and is the emotional state where that masculine, like you said, it wants logic, it wants structure, it wants to analyze things from a mind space. So they really work beautiful when they're on the same page and they're integrated, and they're supporting each other, and one's not trying to live in fear of the other or dominate the other energy. And I think we're so used to living in a patriarchy, right, which has set us up to live from a logical mind space, that we have separated and shut off emotions and a deep understanding of their purpose. We label them as good or bad, run from the discomfort, and then just really have, because of the fears of stuff, right, and experiences that happen to us, and the way it impacts like our nervous system and the brain and all of that, we tend to just shut down, and we get those little triggers and those flags, and we just boom, run the other way, rather than, again, surrendering and trusting, that there's healing, that there's growth, that there's, consciousness that's trying to evolve us as humans. So those are the key things I think come to me when we're talking about surrendering to like the mystery of the divine feminine.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's really good. I think in the like you said, the morning kind of working with the energy. I personally, like, I've just been doing breath work, which is like the most basic sort of thing you can do. It's the most healing, nurturing, loving, compassionate, kind thing that you can do for yourself, because literally having enough oxygen, right, in your body to move in the way that it wants to move as well. It's like this dance that happens, I think,
Mm,
with the breath, and this interconnection, and like you said, in the heart space and stuff like that. It's also the ability to sort of connect it to the throat, right? And to the
mm,
words that we speak, where
yes.
it's like, what are we calling forth as well? Because I think we talk about the power of our words and the power of the vibrational frequencies we send out through our vocal cords. And, as you move in the heart space, or as you're moving in the morning, what you're calling forth for the day is really kind of, it is that intention setting, but it really is allowing yourself to say, this is what I call forth, and then trusting.
Mm,
Right, and that's where the surrender comes from, is the trusting, right? So that it's
yeah.
not moving up into the mind of like, I have to do this and this and this to get to the things that I'm calling forth. It's really knowing your heart, understanding your heart. I'd say breathing into your heart, breathing even into your lower energy fields to bring out the true essence, right? That radiates from the heart. And then as the heart, because as we know, the heart itself has an energy field that radiates beyond, and it goes out. So it's kind of nice, because our heart kind of knows, right? When we're good in a good space, and if we wake up and we're allowing the heart to lead, and we're breathing into it, and we're letting the heart radiate out all of this energy, the next thing is, what words are we using, right? Hey, poetic, to guide us through that as well. And those words become sort of the intention. And I mean, you can see it as perhaps some of the masculine energy, but instead of moving it into the mind to try to control how those words or intentions are going to play out, it's really just allowing that to radiate into the cosmos,
Yeah.
and then letting that reverberation or whatever it is come back to us, like sending out the waves and letting the waves come back in.
Hmm.
So we ask it, we call it forth. Surrender would be like, I open my arms and allow that mystery to come back into me without having to control it or make up how it's going to come to me, which is just, it's not easy to surrender to the
Right.
mystery. It's easier said than done. And I think, yes, we get in our heads,
Mm,
which, is can be seen as very masculine, very, trying to figure out how we're going to get where we need to go, rather than allowing things to emerge as they will.
right.
Um, And neither is right or wrong. I always have to say there's no right, wrong, good or bad. We need the masculine, obviously. But I think for us, and I'm going to say women right now, I think a lot of us are feeling that need to just surrender
Yeah.
and allow things to emerge as they will. Um and I do like the idea of like just, letting the day kind of lead you, in the morning, like you said, which is what I've been doing. And again, you guys can practice breath work, which has been a saving grace for me. It's been a life changer. Where, I pretty much almost every day will breathe for an hour just lying in bed. Like literally letting the breath lead the way.
Mm.
Um, and then once I'm up and moving, I just allow my body to just kinda do what it's gonna do, and part of it is I naturally do go to what you would call chores, but it's not something that I have on my agenda. It's just that natural ability to just be like, "Okay, this is what like making my bed or whatever it is," right? Where I feel this, there's some organization as well.
Right.
Um but it's that natural tendency. There's this excitement about doing it rather than, like you said, that mental stress of, "Oh, I have to do this." It's, "No, I get to do this. I get to get up and I get to, you know,
Right.
clear this space and organize." And I don't feel bogged down that it's this chore that I have on a list of something to do. It's more of this natural emergence of energy that's guiding and leading and saying, "Okay, well, now we're gonna do this or we're gonna do that." The hard part of this, although, is not in the tiny things, but the bigger mystery, that we're being called forth. And
Yeah.
that's hard because we all have this divine purpose. Every single individual on this planet has a divine purpose and are being called. Now, are they surrendering to it or not is another question, but I
Right.
think we spend most of our life really trying to chisel away and trying to force or trying to push our agenda of our calling into the universe rather than allowing it to emerge and allowing the mystery to show itself because it's hard. Because we want it now, because the timing is not exactly how we want it, and it's never going to be. It's like
Right.
we want immediate, the immediacy of it, but then it wouldn't be a journey, right? It wouldn't it would be if it all just unfolded right away in front of us, we'd be left going, "Oh, now what?" You know?
Right.
So, yeah.
There's a lot of
Go ahead.
times where I'm like, Pam, like what you're hoping for is like deathbed stuff when you're looking back and seeing, really seeing the mystery of how life unfolded and how things happen. But right now you have to be, in the moment and just let it
Yeah,
happen. You're not gonna know. And so you're like eating. And that's
that's right.
okay.
That's okay. They said right, living life and experiencing it with tenacity. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's just it's hard. The surrender is not an easy thing. Surrendering
Yeah.
is like it's the
Mm.
hardest thing. I usually with my clients, when I was working with them, I think because I always think of the hanged man, right? That's the card that always comes to mind for me is the hanged man because it's just like, let me just surrender, hang upside down. So I usually just have people kind of I always tell them, "Try to hang off the monkey bars if you can, or, like,
Yeah.
strap your legs to something and then, like, just hang upside down," right? And just allow yourself to surrender, you know, to whatever it is, you know? Of course, we don't want people getting dizzy, so don't do it for too long, um, or lightheaded, because all the blood will rush to your head. But it's even, like, being able to see life through a whole new perspective as well, which is what the hangman provides to us. It's like we're always looking from an upright position. What if we were to just look from the upside down position, right? And just allow ourselves to just hang there. Um, which you don't have control unless you can walk on your hands, which some people can. But even if your hands weren't available to walk on, you would just be like looking at life through a whole new vision, a whole new way.
Right.
And you would just be hanging there in complete surrender to it. So that's like a way you can try to embody surrender,
Mm.
um, and really experience it. But there are other ways as well. So talking about it and actually being it or practicing it, of course, two different things and completely not, it's not as easy as it sounds.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a lot of
let's see, I see things.
discomfort and
Yeah, there
fear.
is discomfort for sure. I see things through the lens of things happen for me and not to me. That's correct. And then let's see, I suspend it upside down because I can see everything different this way, not because I can't get upright with it. And if you can't get upright, then I will embrace upside down and quickly figure out what the advantages are from this perspective. Yeah, and that's beautiful. So, and thank you for sharing. So yeah, I think surrendering to the mystery, right? It's
Mhm.
like you said, like you said, what are the advantages? And what are
Right.
the advantages to completely surrendering to the mystery? And I can tell you this, you cannot you a person, a human being, our imagination is great. Don't get me wrong, we have great imaginations and we can create cool things, but the mystery of the divine feminine is far greater than any imagination we could come up with.
Oh
It's
my
just
gosh.
things you can't even
Yeah.
it's you don't know what you don't know kind of thing shows up, and you're just like, "Holy crap, I did not see that coming."
Right?
Like, I
I
could have
agree.
never made that up. Like,
We Yeah, we were just talking about that over like because our past weekend with the ayahuasca retreat space,
mhm,
right? It's
mhm,
like this team that we have massive synchronicities of how we were absolutely destined to meet. There's no denying it. And to come together and be able to facilitate as a team with each other. It's
mhm.
almost like it could be a reality show or a movie. It's just so crazy, and to just sit back and be like looking at an old phase and chapter of my life. Like when I was married, compared to now, it's like had I not surrendered, and I think that's the hardest thing is when we're in relationships too. Like you obviously there's a surrender in the beginning because you don't know each other and you're learning, you know what I mean, and all of wounds and things and you got the mask on. So like it can be really hard to navigate the beginnings of relationships. And then I feel like at the end as well, it's like surrendering to the process as everything is falling apart and the life that you knew no longer exists, and now you're kind of picking up the pieces and healing and taking parts of your identity and whatnot with you, as you recreate something new. And I think that's where like surrender can be really difficult for sure, is when other people are involved and now you have to put like trust into them as well.
Yep. Yep, and that's why I always I love tarot. I love to just relate it to it just makes sense to relate everything to tarot. So easy. It's already there. The process is already there. Just got to look to tarot, right? Whereas
Yeah.
the tower event comes and like people are so afraid of the tower, and I'm like, oh hell yeah, I love the tower. First of all, the card that follows is the star, so that's great. So it's
Right.
like, well, the tower is here, awesome, but also it's scary for people because it is that, it is to the point, so, like, I always say there's, different types of tower events that can happen. There's the tower event that you create yourself, where you're like, "I know this shit's going down, and I'm gonna help it to go down," which
Right.
is probably the easiest process and way to do it.
Yeah, especially
Or
if you're ready to cut the cords and let go.
yeah,
If you're
or
not, then yeah.
and then there's the one where you prolong it and you know you're supposed to be out of there, and then the universe pushes that tower on you. That's a harder one to go through. Um, and then you're like, I don't have a choice but to surrender. Like there's no other choice. Like I
Yeah.
have to. This is just the way it is. And then, but it's cool because what comes after the surrender, right, is the beautiful part. Sometimes we have to let go of those things to get the next blessing, and some people don't, right? The lover,
Mhm.
what was amazing banger is going to come from this. Oh, amazing. I learned so much. Uh the tower. Let's see what an amazing banger is going to come from this. Yeah, exactly. It's true. It's and it's good. I mean, the tower is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. I think people view it as a bad thing, and it's probably because the way the card looks. You know what I mean? It's like,
Right.
well, depending on what cards like the
Yeah.
traditional ones are people are falling. It's like, um, but but in reality, I mean, it could be that bad. Just depends. And again, I always say, when you need to let go and surrender.
Right.
People know, they just prolong it, and then obviously cosmic forces come in and that's just to me, I'm like, "Oh, no. I am not trying to go through that, cosmic surrender because it's harder." It's like, oh,
Yeah.
slaps me in the face and happens really quickly.
Absolutely, because you haven't learned, and, so it's
No,
like
thank
something you need more force, okay, I'm gonna give you more force, like, I think sometimes we need that undeniable proof that this path isn't the one to take anymore, and you gotta be able to surrender and trust in the new, which you totally can't see, um, that
Yep.
mystery, right, of the unknown, and that
Ugh.
is really scary to the ego.
That mystery of the unknown is where I'm at because I'm clairvoyant. And I have usually can kind of see where I'm headed.
Mm.
And for the first time, because I've actually said I'm gonna surrender, like, I'm getting it now. I'm like, "Duh, I called this in, Natalie." Where it's like, I surrender to the mystery of the divine feminine, I see nothing. I'm like, "What? I can't see my life. I don't know what's going on." And it's freaking me the flippers out. Like, I'm not even gonna lie, because like, at some level, like, we're all control freaks, it's the truth, and at some level, I was a very big control freak, not I would say I was a level 9, and now I'm, like, a level 2, and it's, like, an extreme, I'm telling you, it's an extreme, and I'm letting it try to ride out, but, like, it's freaking me out, like, that I can't see 2 steps in front of me at this point, which is just sort of it's scary. It's okay, so it has, like, this 2 prongs thing, right? Because it's kind of exciting too. Because 'cause I'm like,
Mm.
"Ooh, what's gonna show up?" But then it's kinda, like, scary because 'cause I'm like, "What if nothing shows up?" And then I'm just and then I'm just depressed. So, I think there's, like, this balance between the 2 right here. I'm like, "Oh god, I think I need to kind of figure out the balance." And that's where you don't go to one extreme or the other perhaps,
Right.
but I'm totally kind of going into the extreme surrender because I feel like it's something that is not done enough. And I feel like again, I think women are getting this message, before men, because I'm seeing it starting to circulate. You know what I mean? It's like this
Mhm.
collective consciousness is starting to wake up in the
Mhm.
actual women first, I believe, where
Yep.
I'm seeing it more and more. A lot of us are just like, I'm surrendering, I'm surrendering, I'm surrendering.
Right.
You know what I'm surrendering and not trying to control. And I think for those of us that are clairvoyant, psychic, have these mystical powers and stuff, that our vision, and this may not be for all of us, but I think our vision is starting to just go dark, and that's kind of scary because it's like almost like the veil, right? It's
Yeah.
like the veil of the high priestess where it's like, well, you want the truth, you've got to go through this void,
Mm.
um, this darkness. You've got to walk through the darkness and not know.
Right.
And so I really am in that place. And,
Yeah.
I of course, I do the oracle stuff because 'cause I'm like, "Yeah, I need some oracle readings, I need something." You know what I mean? I'm like,
Yep.
"Give me some kinda sight, give me just a little crack, even if it's a peephole, I don't know, give me something. Get a peephole!" No, just kidding. Oh my god. Um, to try to figure it out, but I think that's the part, like, I could see in the collective still, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Collectively, I can still have clairvoyance. I can still kind of see where things are headed. There's some knowing that's coming to me, but
Yep.
for my own life, it is a complete mystery at this. So I am complete. I'm surrendering to the mystery. I'm like, all
Right.
right, what you got? you know? And
Yeah.
maybe at some point I'll be like, "Okay, now I need to step in and kind of drive something because it's not I don't know if it's going anywhere or something." I don't know what the answer is, um, but I can say this, I do find some peace. I have found peace and tranquility, and I found sanctuary,
Mm.
um, in it.
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
absolutely. But then also I think it leans towards, and it can, if it's taken too much to the extreme, can lead to depression too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have
And
to,
uh-huh.
like, still do stuff. That I
Correct.
think that's where, right, the masculine balance, comes in because, like, you know,
Sorry, I'm
it
like Greg. We just get to say
no, it's true though, like, 'cause I mean, if you
I'm
just
Greg.
surrender, it can yeah, it can get to a space where you're not creating things, right? You're just kinda waiting for, in, like, the cosmic waiting room, I guess.
I was
And
like,
it's
I'm
like you still
Greg.
gotta take those action steps when you know to, like, follow through and then, right, again, just surrender to the outcome and stuff.
Yes. Sorry, I just keep saying I'm Greg. I'm Greg. I'm totally Greg right now. People are like, "Who's Greg?" Oh my god. So Greg is hopefully Greg will listen to this one time. So he's coming up into my mind. Maybe I'll hear from him. But Greg, for those who don't know, is a fellow classmate of ours that when we were a master's program. But he was all about the beingness and the essence. And it was funny because at the time I'm like, Greg, you got to do something. Me, you probably do, but I'm the doer, and now I'm trying to be the being, and so
Right?
now maybe Greg's doing right now, right? And I'm the being now and whatever, I don't know. Um,
Yeah. No, I feel like even for us it flipped because, like, when we aligned last year, I remember talking to you about that, like the waves when we were talking about twin flame energy, and I was like, okay, the feminine, she's been
yeah.
riding some waves first, and then the masculine's kind of behind a little bit on their wake up,
Mhm.
right?
Yep,
And I
yep.
think it's the same thing. Like, again, the feminine is returning, it's rising, and because it's so in tuned with the female body, um, yeah, I think we've had to reconcile, like, what does it mean to be feminine and even nurturing and being that caregiver and stuff, so there's a lot that's happening for the collective that is based on just healing and integrating these energies that people aren't consciously aware of because they don't have the connection, they don't have the understanding, they don't have, like, the educational piece. But once you are in it for a good year, 2 years, my gosh, for me, like 9 8 9 years, it really becomes this bigger puzzle that you're really seeing all of the key pieces that are getting, like, interlocked and understanding, like, oh wow, okay, so this is what surrender and trusting the process looks like, because again, it's getting me into alignment with why I'm here and the people, and I really feel like we got to go through the darkness to get to the light, and even that happens through our own personal relationships with ourselves and others. um but just learning to surrender and trust rather from shutting down or running away or holding on too tight, like, it just shifts things and you start getting these opportunities and these connections that you could have never fathomed were ever possible.
Yeah, I think that's what I think. I think it's like walking through the darkness. It's so different from because it's not the dark night of the soul for me, right? It's not
No,
one of those, but it is walking through this darkness, but it's really different. So it's like, and I don't know, maybe there's a distinction there just like hit me right now
I
that
would say
there's
the moon, since we're talking
this
about tarot,
this
I would say the moon card. It's fully embodying the darkness of night in the woods and not knowing where you're going. You know what I mean? Like, trusting in the intuition to kind of guide you.
yeah, and well, I'm seeing that it's like there's this distinction that I'm sort of like that's coming to me right now or channeling through me is that there is this dark night of the soul, and I think the dark night of the soul is really more ego based,
Yeah.
where our ego is going through this death, but what I'm feeling is not necessarily an ego death. It's more of like walking through the mystery of the unknown, and it's not even the moon. I think it's like I would say the high priestess, to be honest with you,
Oh yeah,
because
yeah,
there's like because there's no light, but there's no light. Like I don't see any light. Like I
yeah.
don't see any reflection. I don't see any light. I'm not seeing anything that the moon would provide. What I'm seeing is that I'm walking through the mystery in the darkness, and that
Right.
is a different feeling than the dark night of the soul, which I feel
Yeah.
comes from an ego death or the ego not knowing. It's like my ego is not trying to figure it out,
Right.
and I'm not trying to figure it out, but I'm completely in the dark about what there is. So it's like this ability to surrender to the darkness of the mystery of the veil and letting things emerge, which is sort of like this. It's weird. It's like now that I'm talking about it, I'm like seeing all these like distinctions between the two because I'm not feeling like an ego death or like
Mm.
um like my life is falling apart. Like I don't feel like that.
Right.
I'm just like have no clairvoyance. I have zero light coming in right now for my own life. Everything else I do, but my own life is just and I'm just like, okay. Like there's no ego trying to even control it. The ego's not coming in and saying, we've got to do this and that. It's really like I'm just
Yeah.
but I think the ego is feeling more depressed that it doesn't have a role.
That makes sense. But
It's
I could
not
see
bad.
that. I could see you embodying it, like, from the soul aspect, right? Like, where you said the high priestess for sure, right? Because
Uh-huh,
she's the embodiment of the unknown,
uh-huh,
after
yep,
yeah, so I could see
mhm,
that, like, kind of walking through the moon part and, right? Because even a new moon, new beginnings, you don't know, there is no light shining in the sky, but coming out on the other side, like, "Oh, I learned, it got me to where I need to be." And then that builds trust and strengthens your connection with surrender. So the next time you have to go through that cycle and do it, it's much easier because like, you're guided, you're protected, you're going to end up, letting go of what you need to, and getting into alignment of what's best for you. And so I think it really truly does quiet the ego so the soul can rise.
yeah, and I honestly I just like, "Oh my god, my ego is depressed." My ego's sad. It's funny, I'm just getting like this, like this, like, sad person sitting on a stump, like, "Meh." Just meh. What am I supposed to do? You know what I mean? And I'm like, "Okay, ego, it's okay if you're depressed." Like, it's not mad, it's not angry, it's, like, sad, like, "Oh, I don't really have control." It's like, "No, you don't."
Right.
And that's okay, but it has a role. It doesn't
Yeah,
have control, but it has a role, you
absolutely.
know? And I think maybe that's where I'm at. Maybe it's, like, this rediscovery of, like, my ego function of
Hmm.
how does my ego play a role in supporting my divine truth
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff, so because it's
Right.
not an ego death, the
No,
death is
definitely
already
not.
yeah, the death has already happened. It's more of an ego depression.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say that because I can see characters emerging in my mind. Oh, you need a hug. My ego needs a hug. That's it needs a hug.
Oh, that's funny.
Just needs a pat on the back. It's like, "It's okay."
Right. You've done a good job. You earned a break. You can have a timeout while we figure things out and reconvene.
Oh my
But
god.
I
I
but I
needed this
think for
podcast apparently.
yeah. But I think for society, in a lot of ways, when it comes to surrendering and to, like, trusting in the soul and whatnot, I think like, life purpose. I mean, we talked about relationships and stuff, but I think another aspect is life purpose,
Mhm,
and trying to find something, because obviously we need money, right? We need to, like, have financial stability because there's a structure there, and our survival
mhm,
instincts are always going to kick in first. And if you're in survival mode, it's really hard, to dive deeper into, like, you need to be able to feel safe. So once those basic needs are met, then it becomes like, what is my purpose, like, right? What's my reason?
yep, Yes.
And we get so tied up into thinking is attached to money, is it's attached to a 9 to 5 job. Um, and so I feel like even that is like surrender and let go, right?
Mhm.
Quit that really comfy, great, amazing job that has all those benefits and take a risk and go and do something else because that's calling you. And I think like with COVID, especially because look at like online and working from home now, how many people are like, oh man, I don't have to go into an office to do this job. I can work from home and still like show up and do my responsibilities, right? It's not like we're all just sitting around in pajamas being lazy for years. um, but it shifted things and it showed that there's other ways. And I think that it has too been a huge like wave, right, of energy that as a collective has been a trigger for our conscious evolution again. Um, so to me, like being an entrepreneur with you, like this is a whole new experience in my life. So there's been a lot of like, okay, I'm going to surrender and trust in the process because I am so attuned with my heart. And I know that like this is my purpose. And now I just got to figure out like the material world, right? Like I had to learn things about social media and marketing that I had no desire to engage with outside of a business aspect. Um, so I think even, those smaller things are calling to us every day. But again, like where's fear and where is ego playing a role? And what are we really tuned with and what are we listening to? Um, yeah, that's kind of coming up for me as we're talking about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's a big piece. What are we tuned into, and what is our ego? It's like this. It's weird because it's like our ego has a role. Our ego has to go through all of this like craziness, right? Because that's really the human condition is the ego development, whatever.
Right. The
You say,
human programming.
huh? And then
Yeah.
we do get to a space where we are able to reflect. And I think something that you said just really made me understand, is that I have had a lot of time to reflect on myself, like a lot, and I have to be grateful that a lot of people don't get afforded the time and space that I have,
Mm,
which is beautiful. It's been this long, long pause in my life, like long. It's
yeah.
not even, and 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 I'm like, whoa, like I think that it allowed me to kind of tear down the ego and do some ego development work too, because I did some spiritual bypassing, as a child or whatever, and didn't really understand the human condition. Had to take a time out to really, really understand humans, really, because like I've always had this, usually. So I'll just explain a little bit so that you guys can kind of understand. In developmental psychology, what happens is that obviously we go through this development of the ego, and really at the end of our life we're trying to connect back to the higher source. Usually that's what happens, usually, if people are developing properly, and that they're trying to reconnect into divine, something greater. Well, I literally didn't have that. My scenario was flipped around, where I've always known God. I've never not known God. And I've never had to work my way back to knowing God like most people. And that's usually the story. That's usually the case of most individuals, is that they forget God. They're trying to find their way back to God, or to this divine source, whatever you want to call it. Some people will go, back to Christ, or they'll go to Buddhism or whatever. They have these awakenings as they get older. Well, I've never had to have an awakening. I've always been awakened. In other words, I've always known God. That's never gone away. The difference is my developmental piece as a human, which is
Mm,
ego development, which then came later because I lived in my sister would say I lived in I thought life was like a bed of what did she say, flowers and roses and all this. So she used to get mad at me because I'm very optimistic, very positive my whole life. People used to always say, how are you so optimistic and positive? I was like, well, because God, hello. But then reality slapped me in the face of the planet and what the suffering that people go through.
yeah.
And of course I had to go through it myself. So my ego had, you can't bypass it. In other words, no one bypasses it in this dimension or in this time and space. You
Right.
can't and you won't. And so for me, I've been working on developing my ego, which means that I had to accept things about my life that I wasn't aware of in the past. And it had to do with family stuff, family trauma, dealing with the traumas, really looking at the trauma that I went through that I didn't even realize that I was, and having to deal with all that. So I think what I'm trying to say is that, yes, I had this really long pause where I was able to reflect and to heal from those traumas and move through them. And that, I think, was this gift from, the sacred, the divine, whatever you would
Mhm.
call it, of saying you get to experience the feminine side of things, and allow the mystery to reveal itself and allow your ego to take a break
Mm.
and to move through and then take a break and be developed. So I've gone through this like big pause in my life, which has really been a gift, and I think maybe I wasn't looking at it that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As I'm talking, a lot of things are becoming clearer. Maybe I need to just do these podcasts every day again. It's like, oh, it's helping me to realize what the hell I'm going through just talking about
Yeah. No, absolutely.
it. And then the ego death happened, right? Where it's like, who am I? What am I doing? Where am I going? What? And then now I'm at the place where I'm going like, oh, my ego's just bruised and feels like it doesn't have a purpose. And it does. It's not that the ego has a purpose. My soul has a purpose, and that my ego has a function in that purpose.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
need to figure out what that function of the ego is now.
Right.
So, and that just became clear to me now that we're talking about. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now.
I love it.
It just clicked. Hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I think we could say like soul purpose, like let the soul lead,
Hmm.
and let the ego be the function, or
Yeah.
let the ego be the caretaker of
Right.
the soul.
Because at
You
some point, there's ego soul integration as well. I
know,
feel that I've
you don't get it.
experienced.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's what's happening to me.
Yeah. That's beautiful because it usually comes after the masculine and feminine, right? Kind of go into their
Uh-huh.
dance of balance and harmony. Because I was given that same space. I must have had a good year where, like, I was able to just quit my job and homeschool my youngest son, and I kind of did fall in through some depression as I was healing the masculine energy within. Um, but it was like so much gratitude and appreciation for being gifted that space to be able to do the work and to be able to focus just on, who I was as a person, and, the choices that I made that, kind of paved the path for my life to unfold. And then this accountability and responsibility of breaking, those programming functions, like you said, and making choices to no longer, live in those vibrational frequencies of habits and behaviors. It was enough to evolve it and grow and move beyond it, right? Spiral up, spiral down.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
and it became this ego soul integration, which I feel like is the true essence again of like our conscious being and
mhm,
the state that we're at. And like you were talking like about being born and very like awake and aware of your connection of like, where you energetically came from, in the cosmos.
mhm,
And for me, like being the with the Pisces energy, I've always felt, up in my head, but beyond the logical, because there's not like I'm not sitting here like I'm not playing chess. You know what I mean? I'm not that kind of logical person where I'm trying to like understand people's motives and like one up them.
mhm,
Um, it was very much this higher state of thought form and
mhm,
learning to ground and anchor into the physical reality. and bring that in and get together and integrate it. And so it's like, okay, now I know, like, I truly know and understand who I am as a conscious being in this human body on this conscious planet we call Earth or Gaia, as well as understanding the star aspect, right? We always say we're made of stars and things like that, but it was really fully understanding where that consciousness was out there and
Mhm.
like integrating it all together and then preparing and looking for like the next evolutionary stage of this consciousness.
Mhm. Mhm.
So then the ego quiets down, the ego starts to understand, like, okay, I was programmed and, but I can be rewired and I can be reprogrammed. So it is very much like these computer programs, that's truly what we are, as well as like puppets. And, there's like all of these beautiful symbols and images that really capture the essence of consciousness. And I think that's what we're doing. The more we've surrendered out of the normal, quote unquote, the normalness of what's expected and what like being human is, right? Of just waking up and taking care of other people and going to work. And, we start to recognize that there's a lot more happening on an individual level that integrates and impacts the synchronicity of the collective.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's kind of what's, I mean, going on. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I really have allowed myself to surrender to the feminine, because that's been the hardest thing for me to to do.
Mhm.
As a driver, as always showed up very masculine. My feminine side was more. Um, I didn't nurture myself, basically, is what ended up happening.
Yeah,
And that was a detriment to my health, to myself. Um, and there was a lot of harm and a lot of physical trauma that was kept inside because of it. But the protector of the masculine would show up, and realizing like, oh, it's because I'm protecting myself. I needed someone to protect me. And I was the only one who could do that, because
hmm,
in the world that I lived in, there was no one there to protect me but me.
right,
So, trying to figure out what it would look like to surrender is, really having individuals around me that I feel safe enough to do that, and know that, I don't need protection, but that they can protect my heart. And I think that
right,
was the big piece of it, right? I think the feminine wants protection of the heart. That I think even as women, even in relationship, even with partner, whatever, is that the protection that we need is not necessarily bodily protection. We need that too, obviously, but it's protection of the heart, so that our hearts can really drop into the love and the essence that radiates within us. Otherwise, we have to protect it on our own. And
right,
that and then we can never fully expel the love that comes from each one of us. Like, we're not able to tap into that and share it with the world. It's just like our heart chakras are shut off completely because we don't feel safe enough to share it. We don't feel safe enough to open it up, and that's kind of what I was feeling. Like, I don't feel safe. Like, how am I supposed to open up my heart fully to all the mystery of the world if I don't feel safe enough to do that? I'm going to protect it naturally. And
right,
but I've been working with allowing myself to open up fully, and my heart feeling like it's protected, and that I have a safe space to do that fully without feeling like I have to defend myself or um, anything. I could just really surrender to it. And so I've been very grateful, right, for the individuals who have showed up to help me through the process. Um, And of course it's accelerated if you're with a partner or you're with somebody being able to do that, because I have friends that I've been able to do that with. But when you're actually intimate with somebody and you're able to surrender this way, it
Yeah.
kind of, I think it expedites or it speeds up the process of that integration too.
Yeah.
And and it, because there's still some kind of residue that's left behind, but another individual that is there and intimate and allows you to open up your heart space is like a whole other, like, dimension of it, you know? And it's,
Yeah.
so I feel very, I feel like I have a lot of clarity. I'm really glad we did this podcast. Like, I always tell people, it really, I do this for myself. And then hopefully you get something out of it, because I'm like, when I talk it out, I'm like, oh shit, I didn't even realize that was there. But no, but it is for you guys too. But um, it is. But we do it. We do it for ourselves. Let's be real, right?
Right.
We
Right.
get something,
Absolutely.
and we hope that others get something out of it as well. But I think that's what it is. I think that I just kind of figured it out, is that this ego of mine is sort of not understanding its role and its function. And I
Mhm.
think the sacred feminine or the divine feminine is, I'm surrendering to the mystery of what that is, and that's like my soul is leading the way,
Yeah.
and the ego is kind of like, okay, now what do I do? So I think the integration is really letting the ego kind of take a new shape and a new form, and saying, you know,
Right.
you're not the master.
Right.
Soul is the master, and
Right.
you are the support system of that, and
Absolutely.
you can support that, you know. And I know that my ego can't. I know that the internal workings of me can allow that. And I think that too is like the ego surrendering as well, and saying, okay, I get it. Like, I don't need to control every aspect of every damn thing of my life, which is
Right.
what I used to do, because I was like, I'm going to control all of it. And now I'm like, oh, well, I'm really not going to. And it's okay. And I feel fine. And I'm taken care of. And I think, and I'm protected, and all that. So, yeah, this really, really, I have a lot to even reflect on from this. And so many things are just popping up in my head. I'm making so many connections. I had epiphany after epiphany after epiphany, which is really good. I haven't had that in a while. so,
Yeah.
so that's good.
That's awesome.
Something's happening. I
You're
wonder if
you're
I'm gonna hear.
moving forward.
I
Get
wonder if I'm gonna hear from Greg. That's all I keep thinking of. Maybe Greg's doing something.
right. Maybe we should check on
Like,
him.
we
See
were
what's
like, "What the
up.
hell is Greg?" Well, Greg is a good friend. Maybe he'll be on here one day,
Yeah, we
someday,
should totally get him to come on here.
and talk
Oh.
about being. Just kidding. Oh Lord, I can't with myself. But yeah, so I'm good. I don't. Do you have anything else to say, or am I
Um, I guess
rambling?
the only thing that I'm still like right kind of looping in my head from this space of surrender and post integration of soul and ego, masculine, feminine. Like I had cards last night that came out and it was shadow work on top of the heart chakra. And I was like, oh, okay, as I'm putting them back into the deck.
Mhm.
And then I swear, like, it's always just warning me. It's always giving me a heads up of what's to come, but I don't realize how quickly it is. And by the time I was trying to lay down, like, there I was dealing with shadow work of the heart space. But like you said about like the intimacy and having, someone who shows up in your life from this, beautiful healed space and, who's mirroring you and there's a lot of scariness to that. And even though like I know my heart wants to continue to open, um, I think it's like a new level of like fearing vulnerability, which seems crazy to me because I was at a space where I love the opportunities to get vulnerable. Like, are you kidding me? I can have a heart to heart conversation and know that I am safe to talk to you. But now it's like, oh man, vulnerability feels scary. But I think it's just a deeper aspect of the heart and the unknown. And I guess more specifically, I feel like we've talked about love, right? Love being that highest vibration of the universe and coming from love and going back to love and all of creation coming from love. And I feel like on my own personal journey, like that's where I am at. That's what I'm kind of tapping into and working from. And so the surrender of trusting in that is really scary, especially when there are other, parties involved and other people, and you can't control them and you can't make them stay, or you can't, expect people to want the same things as you.
Mhm.
But being able to tap into that space, I at least recognize what this vibration of love truly feels like, where it wants to create. And I think like that's where on a physical level, we either tap into ourselves and create some kind of artwork that expresses what we're feeling and channeled with, or the reproductive aspect kind of kicks in, and like
Mm.
that's where babies come from, like they would say.
Mhm.
And I think I understand, like I always thought it was so cliche and cheesy of like, oh, make love to me.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I feel like for the first time in my life, absolutely understand that state of surrender and that vibrational frequency of love.
Mhm.
And so I think I just kind of want to end it with, regardless of how, scared the ego feels, you got to follow the heart. You just got to truly listen to the heart, and anything that the ego wants to do to shut it down, push it away, say this isn't morally right. I think that's where you just have to take time to sit with yourself and follow that, question that. Like you said, don't judge it, because there's no right or wrong. It's probably like how you've been conditioned to view it,
Mhm.
especially when we're living in a society where relationships are falling apart. A lot of people are like, oh, nobody respects marriage anymore. It's like, no, maybe marriage just doesn't work anymore. And we have to look at new ways to understand relationships.
Mhm.
Um, so that's kind of where I'm at, and what I've just, as we're closing out, was kind of looping in my head.
Mhm.
But I'm just, yeah, I missed doing last week for sure. And I'm just grateful, when we can come together and just decide on a topic before we hit live, and then, have epiphanies or put in the puzzle pieces for each other, and then put it out there, right? We're surrendering now to the universe that whoever's meant to hear this will
Mhm.
hear it. And hopefully our words of wisdom
Mhm.
can give them something to sit with, that they can then, have a beautiful impact, ripple effect from there. So that's
Yeah,
where I'm
absolutely.
at.
No, it is true. It's hard to surrender to somebody, and open up and know that, you know, again, the ego comes in. Will they stay or leave? And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What
Right.
matters is that you were able to experience a piece of yourself that you couldn't get to maybe on your own fully. But
Right.
now you know what that's like, and now you understand what it feels like to experience that. So it's something you could tap into after the experience is gone, even.
Right.
You know what it is. Um, and so it is scary, and the possibility of other people walking out or leaving is a possibility, right? But the tapping into the heart and allowing the heart to fully be penetrated is what I call it. Because I think, from the
Mhm.
if you talked about it from the like the sexual part of it, right, which is a whole other thing. It's like the penetration of the heart and allowing another to do that is the most vulnerable. Like, people would
Yeah.
think it's actually having sex and intercourse, and it's not. It's
Right.
when someone can pierce your heart and penetrate it. That's scary. And that's where the fear lies. So you're right. You've got to be able to allow your heart to move through the fear,
Mm.
and experience what's on the other side of that. And so that's just, and that takes, it takes trust, it takes time, it takes, vulnerability, it takes openness, it takes a true warrior, I believe.
Mhm.
It takes
Mhm.
warrior energy to do that. And so, um, but I think we're headed in that direction.
Absolutely.
I know you are. And so, for our listeners, hopefully you guys are as well. We need it right now. We really
Yeah.
need people to start connecting through the heart space with each other. Um, in friendship, but also in intimate relationships, which is a whole other thing. So maybe we'll talk about penetrating the heart in intimate relationships. No, I don't know.
I love it. I love it. The snake's mouth, man. The snake's mouth opens right up at the heart. I saw that. Oh,
Yep,
that was gorgeous.
yep,
That was a
yep,
pretty powerful energy.
yep, yep, yep. So there you have it. We follow if you would like to follow us again on Facebook, on Instagram, Women of Consciousness. You can go to our website, womenofconsciousness.com. We have some stuff coming up for women, ladies who are interested in doing goddess circle work. And we will be talking about sexuality, which is, I think, really important. We're going to be having a virtual retreat coming up soon as well. We would love for you guys to be involved. And we will share that information on our website as well. You can also email us if you have any questions. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Thank you.